Hello there everyone, this is Dragon Quest Monsters, the Dark Prince. The Dragon Quest Monsters sub-series has been going on now for like 25 years, so it's been around a while, and it's also interesting that there are kind of more of them than there are mainline Dragon Quest games, despite the fact that it's a sub-series. It's very successful, and it kind of reminds me of something like Persona in regards to Shin Megami Tensei, in that a lot of people have played the spin-off, but fewer have played the original necessarily, at least outside of Japan. I know that Dragon Quest in Japan is like a massive deal. But the Dragon Quest Monsters games they're still JRPGs like the mainline Dragon Quest games, but instead of having a party of people that you go through an adventure with, you are collecting monsters. So this is a monster collecting game, although it does not play anything like a Pokemon or something like that, and is closer to a Shin Megami Tensei game in terms of how its actual sort of gameplay loop is structured, but it's very much its own thing. But first off, how it looks and sounds. So it looks like a Dragon Quest game. And you can tell that it was a Switch game in terms of its environment art and stuff. It's a little bit low res, it's a little bit simple, although the rest of the game, the character models, the monsters, the really colorful in-your-face stuff, all looks really, really good. And this is, of course, classic Akira Toriyama art, so it, of course, looks fantastic. And really, the monsters are the focus here, if the name didn't clue you into that. This game is all about collecting monsters, so you want the really colorful, huge variety of Dragon Quest monsters that the series has obtained over the years to be really well represented here, and they do look really good. They're super colorful, they're really well animated, they've got a lot of character to them, and there was a lot of attention lavished on the monsters, and you can tell. And I think of all the places to put that attention, especially for a more limited game in terms of you got to work on a Switch, I would rather it be on the monsters than in the environments and stuff. The environments are fine, they do what they need to do, and some of them still look pretty good art style wise, but in terms of like raw asset quality and stuff, they are a little bit low res. Sound-wise, it is using a lot of classic Dragon Quest sounds that you'll know if you've played any of the games. You know, your level up sound, your battle ending sound, the victory music. There's a lot here that is very Dragon Quest. So this kind of feels like a game that was made for people that are significant fans of several Dragon Quest games, especially the classics, because it uses a lot of those sound cues and a lot of those little details in the soundtrack and stuff, and you'll recognize them immediately. Each area also has its own soundtrack, and they're all quite good. Even your home tower has multiple soundtracks to it. You've got like the sort of wandering around the tower music, and then you've got the more upbeat music that happens in the basement where you do all of the monster fusion and your shopping and banking and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of attention put on the music of this game, I think, that has made it feel very classic Dragon Quest. Story-wise, it's actually a little bit interesting because this is linked directly to one of the mainline Dragon Quest games, because you play in this game as the Dark Prince, aka Pissarro or Sorrow. I'm not actually sure how you say his name, I've never heard anyone say it out loud, but we'll just say Sorrow. He is the villain of Dragon Quest IV, so you're kind of playing his origin story in this game. This game starts before Dragon Quest IV begins. Around halfway through, you'll witness the beginning of Dragon Quest IV when the hero's starting village burns down. You're actually there for it. And then the rest of the game is related to the entirety of the Dragon Quest IV sort of late game experience. And it's mostly linked to the remake, because in the original Dragon Quest IV, the game sort of ends after you beat his monstrous form, whereas the remake adds the whole reviving Rose and getting him snapped out of his monster form and having him join your party, and then continuing on a bit of an adventure and finding Amon and all that stuff. And this game kind of retcons a little bit of the remake ending or the remake progression and changes a little bit about how it works, involving some time travel. And basically it replays the ending of the original game as sort of the bad ending, and then you go back and do things a little bit differently. But, of course, what you're really here for is the gameplay, because that's what the Monsters subseries has always been about. It is a creature collector of a very obsessive variety where you want to collect as many as possible and fuse them into new and more powerful forms as you go. The combat system here is a little bit streamlined, but still has a lot of choice. You have a party of 4 monsters with you at any given time, as well as 4 monsters in reserve that you can swap them out with, and they'll also automatically swap out if all 4 of the ones in battle get knocked out. Although those are for small size monsters, there are also large size monsters that take up 2 of those 4 slots each, but in exchange they also have 2 turns and tend to have higher stats. When you're in battle, you can simply choose fight, and your monsters will automatically fight. They will choose what they feel is the best thing to do, but this is not like an auto battler. Even though the fighting is a little bit more automated than a traditional Dragon Quest game, you can still individually give orders to everyone and tell them exactly what to do if you want to. So you don't have the inability to control them, you can still control them directly. It's just that the basic fight button causes them to, if you don't give them an order, automatically choose what they think is best. Using an item works a little bit differently in this game because your monsters themselves don't use items. You do as the character, which means you can use an item and still have all 4 of your monsters get their turns, but it also means you can only use 1 item every round. And what you're gonna want to be doing as much as possible is scouting monsters. This is how you capture them. And there are 2 different ways to do this. For one, you can just press the scout button in combat, and this will do a show of force where each of your 4 monsters, depending on their stats and levels, will contribute a percentage to this overall big percentage gauge. And then as soon as all 4 of them have contributed, you'll see the final percentage, and that is the percent chance of the monster joining you. So it'll flash for a second, and then it'll decide whether or not they are won over by this show of force and if they'll join you. If yes, then the battle will automatically end no matter how many other monsters there were. Just scouting one of them will complete the battle. You also do not get experience or drops or money or anything for scouting a monster. So if there are 4 enemy monsters and you kill 3 of them and then scout the 4th one, you won't get any of the drops or XP for the 3 kills. So it's generally best to scout early in a battle because that's how you're kind of gonna want to do it most of the time. Also, in most creature collecting games, you want to damage an enemy first because that will give you a higher chance of capturing them. In this game, that's not exactly true. It does increase your chances a little bit if they're damaged, but only a little bit. It's really not much of an increase at all, and oftentimes it's not worth the risk of your monsters accidentally killing the thing you're trying to capture. But scouting them in battle is only one way of doing it. You can also have them join you after the battle is over. Sometimes after the battle's done and all the experience is totaled up and the drops and money are given to you and all that, one of the monsters will get back up and ask to join you that way. This is the preferred way to scout them because it means you get the full experience and drops and stuff from the battle, and you get to have one of them join you. There's only a pretty low chance of this happening at first, but you can get various types of meat and actually feed them to the monsters in battle, and this will increase their chances of joining you afterwards. Also, I should mention, if you fail to scout them in battle, then sometimes they'll get annoyed, which will cause future scouting attempts in that same battle to have a lower chance of success, so it'll just get more and more difficult if you keep failing. But eventually they'll get angered, and angered means you can't scout them at all. Again, you can't choose to scout them anymore, and their next attack will deal bonus damage against you because they're mad. But them getting angered does not stop them from potentially joining you after the battle's over. As far as monster customization goes, there's a ton of it here because of the talent system. So every monster will naturally come with 2 talents. And a talent is a list of a bunch of different skills and passives and stuff. So one talent contains like roughly 10-ish skills. And as you level up that monster, they'll get talent points, and you can put the talent points into any of the talents they know, and you'll see a list of all the skills they learn at different thresholds. So, like at 60 talent points in this one, they'll learn a new spell, or at 150 talent points in this one, they'll learn a big passive or something like that. There are a ton of them. So you have a lot of freedom in terms of what each monster can do, because that's a lot of different potential active and passive skills that a monster can have. Also, they don't only stick with 2 talents. 2 is what they start with, but when you fuse a monster, you can choose 3 talents. And also, you can find scrolls that will allow you to give a new talent to a monster. So if they only have 2, you can give them a new one or replace one of the ones they already have with one from a scroll. Each monster also additionally has a growth rate for each of their stats. It shows you out of 5 stars how fast each stat grows from level up so that you know what they're going to be best at. And also they have different passive abilities. These are things usually at like level 1, level 20, and level 40 or somewhere around there. And these will just accentuate what they can do. They may be big stat increases, they may be a slight stat lowering, but in exchange they sometimes get an extra turn. It may be specializing them towards specific elements, like maybe they have an affinity for the dark element, so every dark elemental attack they use is much stronger, things like that. Now, the monster fusion is done at the basement of your tower. You have a tower that sort of follows you around wherever you go, and at the basement of the tower you can fuse 2 monsters together to form a new one. And the new monster will inherit pretty much whatever 3 you choose of the talents that the parent monsters have, as well as the talents that that particular type of monster naturally has. So you can choose 3 of any of those, so you have a lot of choice. I should also mention that monsters have a rank that's given as a letter, starts at G, and goes all the way up at first to A. But there are also S rank monsters that are much, much stronger but can only be gained via fusion pretty much. And then there are X rank monsters that are the absolute top end game, post end game kind of monsters that require a lot of specific fusions and stuff to get to. So as you go through the game, you're going to want to continually expand your repertoire of monsters by fusing a bunch of them together and creating higher and higher rank beasts with better and better stat lines and stuff. Also, monsters will inherit like half of the talent points that their parents have and stuff, so they actually start with more talent points than a normal level 1 monster would, making them stronger and stronger as you keep fusing them more and more. And also there are some talents that can only be obtained via fusion because you have to get someone with a maxed out talent or get a total number of talent points that are higher than it normally can hold and things like that, and when you fuse them together you might get a special new talent instead that you can choose. You've also got a little bit of extra customization in the form of accessories. Every monster can equip 1 accessory. They're basically pieces of equipment that do various things. Many of them improve stats in some way or give them extra resistances to certain elements or status effects and things like that, but there are more advanced and specialized ones that you'll find later on in the game. So that's really the meat of the game, is exploring around these areas in the underworld, Naderia, and finding new monsters and scouting them and fusing the monsters to create more powerful ones and then continuing up a chain of ranks to get stronger and stronger. Each area you go to will be a circle of Naderia, like the circle of fortitude or the circle of indulgence or the circle of caprice, and each of these have sort of a theme that is related to how they look as well as what kinds of monsters you'll find in that area. And they are split into 3 echelons. And each echelon will have a dungeon at the end as well as a boss at the end of that dungeon. If you beat them, you'll have a higher chance of scouting all of the monsters of that particular echelon. So if there are some that you didn't get on your way there, you want to go back and get them, now would be the time to do it. And as you go through the circles, you'll unlock more and more of them. Generally, there isn't only one that you can go to at a time. Most of the time, there are several that are active at any given time that you can travel to. And you can also choose to do arena fights pretty much whenever you want at first. Arenas are ranked in the monster ranks, so starting at G and going up. And they take more and more money to actually sign up for. But the higher ranked ones, of course, will have better and better prizes as you go. There are 2 different arenas, one in the human world and one in the underworld, that you can choose to fight through that all have their own sets of monsters. An arena battle is 3 opponents. So you've got to beat all 3 of them, and you don't have as much control over your monsters in arenas. That's kind of part of how it works. You can't use items in arenas. You can only use the 4 monsters in your main party, no reserves, and you cannot give them specific orders. You have to mostly rely on their AI and what they feel they should do. So it's basically all about the basic strategies that you can use just by giving them the really simple go all out or don't use spells or, orders like that. You can still use those, but no specific orders. You can't tell them to use a certain spell or anything. And it's all about monster strength, really, just having a really good party of synergistic, powerful monsters of a good rank. And as you continue to do this, you will go up in the arena rankings, and eventually you can, at the post-game, reach like the level S arenas and stuff and get super good rewards. So overall, in my opinion, The Dark Prince is a really, really good creature collecting RPG. If you enjoy games like Shin Megami Tensei, then you'll probably enjoy this as well. This is not as difficult as one of those games, although it's not easy either. It is actually fairly difficult later on once you get to some of the more advanced boss battles and stuff. It does have its limitations. This is going to be a fairly repetitive adventure because it's all about this monster collecting loop. So you have to really like the monster collecting loop in order to have fun with this game. I did, so I had a lot of fun with it. But if you are looking for more of like a Pokemon-like experience with a lot more of an involved story and various story beats to follow and stuff, this is not really that. This is a little bit more of a sandboxy experience that's pretty much entirely focused on the monsters themselves. And even though it does have some limited tactical shortcomings due to the fact that it is a Switch game, it still, in my opinion, looks quite good and it plays very well, which is the most important thing. It runs well, it's really fun on the Steam Deck, and its monster design is full of color and character and charm, which really helps it out a lot. So personally, I have no problems at all recommending this game to someone that likes JRPGs, likes Dragon Quest, or likes character collection RPGs, because it is a good example of all of those things, and it's just a lot of fun to go through all these various challenges, collecting as many things as you can, and crafting a huge army of crazy monsters. So I'll put the link in the description below this video to the Steam store page for this game if you guys wish to go and check it out yourselves. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.